Hey guys, welcome to another video Python tutorial for beginners. In the previous video, we've learned about string indexing and slicing. And so in this video, we'll be talking about various different methods that we can use with string data type. So let's get into this. So string in Python is one of the built-in class. I know that we haven't actually got into the class just yet. So to just briefly talk about what class is, you can think of class as a container that contains multiple methods. And you can think of method as a sub-container responsible for an action. So what is shown in the screen right now is a high-level template of a class and its method. So if we have a class called person, the methods that would bind to a person class would be some actions such as walk, speak, eat, sleep, and many more. So the method in this class person is representing all the actions that a person can do. So if we apply the same concept to a string class, then the methods that we'll be learning today will be some actions that relate to this string class. So it will look something like what's shown in the screen right now. So a string can have a method of capitalize, format, find, index, and many more. So in this video, I will try to cover some of the important string methods that you guys may find useful when you program. And I will also try to talk about them in a certain order so that we can talk about the methods that contain similar functionalities as a group. Okay, so before we actually get into coding here, there is a useful Python command that you can use, and it's called help. So this help command provides you with a list of methods that a specific data type contains. So if I were to type help and specify my data type as string and just run this as is, you will be able to see the entire list of the method that the class string contains. So if you scroll down, you will see a method that starts with a double underscore, and we call this as a special method. And we will talk more about this special method after we talk about the class in later videos. And if you keep scrolling down, you will see some methods that does not start with a double underscore, and these are the methods that we're going to be talking about in this video. So the capitalized here is the method name that we're going to be calling, and we have some explanations about what each of the methods actually do, and we also have the argument that this method can intake. So this help command can be useful if you forget about the method name or are not sure about what this method do or which kind of argument it takes, or even if you are not sure which kind of data type holds which type of methods, and you can always use this help command as your reference. Okay, so the first method that we're going to talk about is the capitalize. So as the name says it, capitalize method will actually capitalize the first character of a given string. So let me first create a variable here. So I'm going to be naming it as capitalize example equals all lowercase Danny. And then I want to print this out, capitalize example. But before we print this out, we need to call the capitalize method, right? So right now what I did here is that I created a variable and I set that equal to a string data type. So this now is a string variable. So what this string variable means is that it's a string class, right? Because it contains a string data type. So what we can do here is that we can just put dot here, and you will be able to access all the methods that this string class actually contains. So in here, I'm gonna select capitalize method. And when you select the method, it's going to auto-complete everything with the parentheses here. So this parenthesis is actually pretty important because this means that you are actually executing this method. So when you run this, so you will see Danny with capital D here. So the next method that we're going to talk about is the lower. So this lower method will convert all uppercase characters within a given string into the lowercase. So let me create a variable, lower example equals ABCD EFG. So I made it all capital, and then print lower example dot lower parenthesis. And if you run this, you will see that all the uppercase letter was changed to all lowercase. Okay, so moving on to the next method, we're going to talk about islower. So this method checks whether entire characters in a given string is composed of lowercase. So it's going to return either true or false. So let me try this out. So islower example equal, let me first try ABCD, and I'm gonna include one capital letter like this. And if you print this out, print is lower example dot is lower parenthesis. And if you run this, we should expect first, right? Because we contain one uppercase letter here. So if I were to just delete this and run this one more time, then you'd see true because the entire character within this given string is lowercase. Okay, so the next method that we're going to talk about is the upper. So the upper method is the complete opposite of the lower method here. So this upper method will basically convert all the lowercase characters in a given string into the uppercase. So let me create a variable here, upper example ABCD space EFG, and then let me make this one capital, and then print upper example dot upper parenthesis. And if I run this, you will see ABCD space EFG or uppercase. And moving on to the next example, isupper. So this method is the opposite of the islower. So it's gonna check whether the entire characters in a given string is composed of an uppercase letter. So let me create an example, isupper here, and then let me just mix it up, BCD and EFG, and then print isupper example dot isupper parenthesis. So if we run this, we expect first because it's a mixture of lowercase and uppercase. So let's just run this, and as you will see, we get first here. So then if I remove this and make this all capital like that, then we should expect true because everything in here is uppercase. So let's run this and we get true here. Okay, so now we've talked about the capitalized, the lower, islower, upper, and isupper. Let's talk about the swap case. So the swap case will swap the uppercase to lowercase and vice versa. So let's create an example. Swap case example equals, I'm gonna say ABCD all capital and EFG lowercase, and print swap case example dot swap case and parenthesis. And if we run this, then what we expect here is that we expect lowercase of the ABCD and uppercase of the EFG. And if we run this, and as you see, all lowercase here and all uppercase here. Okay, so the next method that we're going to talk about is the format. So the format method is one of my favorite string methods that I use all the time because it allows you to manage the string in a more dynamic and structured way. So let me show you an example here. So I'm going to create a template string. And then I'm gonna say, hello, my name is curly braces, comma, and I love to program in curly braces. And before I call the format method, let's also create two more variables. So first name equals Danny, and then programming language equals Python. So what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to insert these two variables into the blank spots that we have here. So the nice thing about this format method is that it allows you to dynamically insert these values into the blank spots that you specified. So what that means for us is that we can actually still use the same template while changing the values every time based on your logic or condition. So I'm gonna call the format method here. So format first name, comma, programming language. And if you were to print this out, template string, you can see a complete sentence saying that, hello, my name is Danny and I love to program in Python. Okay, so just to recap, what we did here is that we first created a template string like this with the two blank spots, and then we created two new variables and inserted these two variables into the blank spots that we specified by putting them as an argument into the format method. So the nice thing about the format method here is that it not only provides us with an ability to insert these variables into the blank spots, but it also gives us the more readability because the syntax is a lot cleaner than other two methods, which I'm going to show you in a second. And another nice thing about the format method here is that you can easily swap the location of the variables that you specified here. So in the previous video, we've learned that the Python's index starts from 0, right? And that same rule applies to here too. So the first name actually gets the index of 0, and then the programming language gets the index of 1. So what that means here is that we can actually specify the index like that, 1 here, and 0 here. So what it's gonna do here is that it's gonna say, hello, my name is Python. So this programming language will actually map to this location, and the first name will actually map to this location because it has the index of 0, and we specify the index 0 here. So if we print this out one more time, you will see that, hello, my name is Python and I love to program in Danny. So let me put that back. So 0 to 1. And let me also show you the two other ways to generate the same result like this. So I'm going to create another template here, template string 2. I'm going to say, hello, my name is %s and I love to program in %s, and I'm going to put % here, parenthesis, and specify first name, comma, programming language. And if I print this out, template string 2, you will see the same result, right? So what I did here is that you can actually consider this %s as the blank spot. So we have 2 blank spots here, and by using this % here, we are formatting the string so that we can actually assign the first name variable into this location and programming language into this location. And the last way to generate the same result like this is to use the string concatenation, which we have talked about in the previous video. So let me create another variable, template string 3, and hello, my name is space plus first name plus another string, comma, and I love to program in plus programming language. And if I were to print this out, first string 3, then you'd actually see the same result like this. So the next method that we're going to talk about is rstrip. So the rstrip method strips out all the white spaces from the right side of the string. So let me create an example here. So rstrip example equals abcd space, okay, and print rstrip example dot rstrip parenthesis. And if we run this, you can see that there is no space at the right side of it because it was stripped out by this method. And rstrip also takes an extra argument here. Let's say that we don't have a space here, but we have a 3 D's here. And if you specify D here, then what it's gonna do here is that it's gonna strip out the entire D here because D is the ending character for this string. So if I run this, you will see A, B, C. So this only works when the ending character is this. So if I have a space here, it's not gonna work because the ending letter is the space, not D here. Okay, moving on to the rstrip. So rstrip, as the name says it removes the white space from the left side of the string. So I'm gonna create a variable, rstrip example, and space abcd. Let me have a couple more here. And then print rstrip example dot rstrip parenthesis. And if you print this out, there will be no space at the left side because it was removed by this method here. And same thing as the rstrip here. If you specify a character like A here and then have like triple A like this, it's gonna remove the entire A from that string because A is the first starting character. So if you have a space here, it's not gonna work because, you know, A is not the starting character, space is the starting character. So the next up is the strip method. So the strip method is the combined version of the rstrip and rstrip. So it removes the white space from the trailing and leading. So let me create an example. Okay, so print strip example dot strip parenthesis, and if we run this, you will see ABCD without any spaces here. And same thing as rstrip or rstrip, you can actually specify the characters that you want to remove from the leading and trailing position. So if I want to remove the A and D, then I can just type AD, and if I run this, you will see B and C here. And if you want to also remove the B here, then you can just specify B after A here. So if you run this, you will see the C here. And the next method that we're going to talk about is the count method. So the count method counts the number of occurrences of the substring found in the main string. So let me show you an example. So main string equals ABCD, and substring equals to BC. And so that if you want to actually find the occurrence of this BC within this main string here, then we can just print main string dot count and put the substring as the argument. And if you run this, you will see 2 here because the BC can be found at here and here. And another nice thing about the count method here is that you can actually define the start and stop index. So we've talked about the indexing and slicing in our previous video. So if any of you guys need a recap, you can click the link at the top of this video right now. So for now, I'm gonna click the comma and we can actually define the start position here. So I wanna actually start from here to here. So the start index here is 0. And then the stop index, which is the space here, is 4 because the stop index is exclusive and then the start index is inclusive, so that we can put 0 here as the value of A and we can put 4 here as the value of the space. And if we run this, you will see the value of 1 because the BC was only found once from here to here. So the next method that we're going to go through is the endswith. So as the name says it checks whether a main string ends with a substring. So let me create a main string here. Okay, and then substring and then set that equal to EFG. So if you want to check whether this main string ends with this substring, then you can just do print main string dot end with parenthesis and put the substring as the argument. So if you run this, it's gonna return true. And it's gonna return true as well if you just put G here, because it still makes sense that this string ends with G. So if you run this one more time, it's gonna return true. And same as the count method, this endswith also takes the start index and stop index. So what that means is that you can actually specify the range of this endswith method. So that what we can do here is that we can just specify A here, which is 0, and put 4 here as a space here. Let's run this as is for now. And you will see first, because you are only searching from here up until this point and there's no G here, so it makes sense that it returns first. So then let's try to change this to D here, and if I run this one more time, then it's gonna return true because we are only searching from here to here, and then the last character is D, so this string actually ends with D here. So up next we have a startswith. So this is the opposite of the endswith here. So it checks whether a main string starts with a substring. So same process, and then we're gonna define the substring as ABCD, and then just print main string dot start with, and put the substring as the argument. So if we were to run this, we're gonna see true because this string starts with ABCD. And same as the endswith, you can define the start and stop index. So in this case, if we try to define it as 0 to 4, and let's see what happens. It's still gonna return true because it's from 0 to 4 here. So if I put 3 here, then let's see what happens. It's gonna return first because we are trying to look for the ABCD string, but our search range is from A to C. It doesn't include D there, so that it actually couldn't find this substring ABCD within this main string here. Okay, so now let's talk about the index method. So the index method finds the lowest index of the substring in a main string. So let me show you an example. String is, and then the substring is C. Okay, so if I were to do print main string dot index and put the substring as the argument and run this, then it's gonna return 2. So what this means here is that the lowest index found for the C is the index of 2, meaning 0, 1, and 2. So the C was found at this index of 2, so that's why it's returning the index of 2. So what happens if you have another C here like this? And let's run this. It's gonna still return 2 because it only finds the lowest index, right? So this C has the index of 2 and this C has the index of 6. So the lowest index found is the 2 here. So that's why it's returning 2. And another thing about the index method is that if you try to find the index of a string that does not exist, like X here, and try to run, you're gonna see a value error, and this is an expected behavior of the index method, and we can later compare this behavior with the find method. And also, just like the count method and startswith method, you can actually define your own stop and start range. So if I were to do 0 and 4 and just try to find C here, it's gonna return the value of 2 because we are searching from here to here. Okay, so the next up is the rIndex method. So this method is pretty much identical to the index method. However, instead of finding the lowest index, it's gonna find the highest index. So we can actually use the same example here. So I'm gonna copy and paste and then uncomment this. So I'm gonna write print main string dot rIndex, and then put substring here. And then let's try to run this. You will see 6 here because there were 2 C's here, and then it's finding the highest index of C, which has the index of 6. And everything else should be identical. So if you put X here, which doesn't exist in this string, and if you run this, you're gonna see a value error. So the next example is the find method. So this find method, you can think of it as identical to index method, but the only difference here is that instead of throwing the value error that we saw in the index and rIndex, it's gonna throw a -1 if we cannot find the substring within the main string. So let me copy the example from here. Then comment, and let's write a print statement. So main string dot find substring as an argument. And if you run this, you will see 2 here. So it found the lowest index of the substring that's found in the main string here. And if you put the X here, which doesn't exist in the main string, it's gonna throw -1 instead of throwing the value error that we saw in these 2 examples. So the next up is the rfind. So it's very similar to the rIndex that we saw here, but the only difference here is that it returns -1 if the substring is not found within the main string. So I already have all the examples set up. So if I run this, it's gonna return 6 because it finds the highest index, which is a C here. And if I try to put the X here, which doesn't exist in the main string, it's gonna return -1, as we see here. Okay, so the next method that we're gonna talk about is the replace method. So this method replaces the existing substring found in the main string with the new substring. So let me show you an example. So I'm gonna say main string equals, this is old string and old string, okay? And then I'm gonna create a target string that I'm gonna replace, which is the old string here. And then the new string is gonna be the new string, okay? So what I'm trying to do here is that I want to replace this old string that exists in here, which is right here and here, to the new string. So what we can do is that we can print main string.replace and then put the target string to the new string. And if I run this, you will see that this is new string and new string. So all the old string was changed to a new string. And there's one more argument that we can actually use. So let's say that you want to only change this first old string, then you can actually do a (1). So what this means here is that you're only gonna replace this old string once, meaning that you're gonna actually replace the first occurrence that this happened, and then you're gonna leave this as is. So if I run this, you're gonna see that this is a new string and old string, and the second old string has not been replaced because you specify this as 1, meaning that you're gonna only replace once. So if you put this as 2 here, it's gonna replace both of the string. So let's run this, and then you see that this is new string and new string. So now we are getting really close to the end here, so we only have 3 more methods to talk about. So the first method that we're going to talk about for our group 4 is the split method. So the split method splits a string into a list. I know that we haven't actually talked about the list just yet, so for now we can think of a list as a group that contains a multiple element. Okay, so let me give you an example. So split example, and then I'm going to put. And so now what we have here is that we have 6 characters or separated by the space. So if you want to split this into 6 different elements into a list, what we can do is print split example.split parenthesis. And if you run this, you will see 6 different elements or separated by the space. So right now we actually use the space as the delimiter because the split by default uses the space as the delimiter. So if I put a comma here and try to get the same result, then all you have to do is just put the quotation mark and define your delimiter as a comma and run it again, and you will see the same result. And also you can use a different characters as the delimiter. So if I have a colon here and colon here and specify a colon here as well and run it, then you will see 3 different elements because it was split at here, here, and nothing else. So that's why you are seeing 1, 2, and 3. And also the split method has an extra argument called max split. So this max split allows you to control how many times that you want to split within the given string. So if I put a (1) here, that means that I only want to split once right here. So if I run this, you will see 2 different elements, so A and the rest. So it was separated here, but it wasn't separated here because we set it as 1. So if I put it as 2, then you're gonna see 3 different elements as you see here. And the next up that we have is the rsplit method. So this rsplit method, you can think of it as identical to split method, but the only difference here is that it's gonna split a string into a list from the right side only when the max split is defined. So what this means here is that if the max split is not defined, then it's basically identical to the split method. So let me show you an example. So rsplit example, and then okay, and then print rsplit example dot rsplit, and then I'm gonna put the delimiter as quotation comma space. And the reason why I'm putting the space here is because our delimiter here is not only the comma, it's actually the comma plus the space. So if I run this, you'd actually get the same result that you'd get from the split method, but the difference actually comes in when you specify the max split here. So if I say max split of 1, then what's gonna happen here is that it's actually gonna split this one, not this one, because it's actually splitting from the right side. So if I run this, then you'd get a 1 element and then the second element, because the split actually happened from the right side. That's why this one was splitted. So let's try to compare this with this method here. So I'm gonna copy this and paste, and then uncomment, and copy the variable, and change the delimiter, and put it as 1. Okay, so if I run this, So what's going on here is that in both of the lists, we see two elements, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. But in the rsplit, we see that split actually has happened from the right side because the f was splitted. But in the normal split, we actually see that the split has happened from the left side because a was splitted. So that is the difference between the split and rsplit. So the difference only comes in when you actually define the max split here. Okay, so finally we are at the last method for this video, which is the join method. So we can think of join method as the complete reverse of the split method. So in the split method, what we did was that we split a string into a list. So in the join method, we're going to do a complete reverse of that. We're going to take the list and then we're going to concatenate that back into the string with a different separator. So let me show you an example. And I'm going to create a list with 4 elements. I can print the string dot and call the method join and put the join example as the argument. And if I run this, then we get the ABCD. So this list was actually converted back to the string without any space because we didn't specify anything here. So if I were to specify a space like this and then run it again, then you will see a space between each character. And I can also specify comma here and run it. Then you will see A, comma, B, comma, C, comma, D. Okay guys, that's it for this video. We've talked about most of the string methods in Python with some examples and comparisons. So if you have any questions or comments, please comment down below. And if you haven't already subscribed, please click the subscribe and like button. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you in next videos.